Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. Tonight, we saw yet another legal defeat for Donald Trump and the Republican Party, this time in the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court. An overwhelming, humiliating rebuke. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. But of course, that news comes in the midst of the worst humanitarian crisis the U.S. has faced in arguably 100 years. President Trump and the Republican Party are staging their full-scale attack on democracy, even as they collectively allow a 9/11's worth of COVID deaths every single day. In fact, the head of the CDC warned yesterday the U.S. will probably see more deaths from COVID than on 9/11 every single day for the next 2 to 3 months. A 9/11 every single day for 2 to 3 months. That would mean around 180,000 to 270,000 more dead Americans before the end of March. Today, we set a new case record again and almost 3,000 deaths. And yet, one of the two major parties has devoted all of its energy and resources to the most brazen frontal assault on American democracy in living memory. And tonight, they got their butts handed to them in the Supreme Court in a clear repudiation, as expected. The court, which of course includes 6 Republican-nominated justices, basically finding against Trump 9-0. A little bit of dissent about whether the Supreme Court even had to take up the case or not. But ultimately, as many legal experts predicted, they determined the plaintiffs, and I quote here, had not demonstrated a judicially cognizable interest in the manner in which another state conducts its elections. In other words, they had no case. They had no standing. Get out of here. Now, the thing is, there were at least 20 Republican-led states' attorneys general and 126 Republican members of Congress, almost 2/3 of the entire GOP caucus, including the top House Republicans in the House, Kevin McCarthy and Steve Scalise, supporting this lawsuit to overturn the election. It was a lawsuit, just to remind everyone, right, to basically declare Donald Trump the president, despite the fact he lost by 7.5 million votes and multiple states. It is a lawsuit. It was a lawsuit, not to put too fine a point on it, to destroy the union. I'm not being hyperbolic here. The remedy Republicans were asking for was to essentially stay the votes of the electors in 4 states that voted for Joe Biden, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Georgia, not let those electors vote for Joe Biden, and to have the Republican-controlled state legislatures appoint electors to vote for Donald Trump. Even though Donald Trump lost, he got fewer votes. He didn't win those states. And that would mean the election would be overturned and Donald Trump would remain the president. And if you live in a country where the state apparatus can successfully overturn an election to keep the ruling regime in power even when it loses, you do not live in a democracy. You live in a dictatorship. And should the Supreme Court have declared the U.S. a dictatorship, what if this had worked? How do you think the American citizenry would react? And Republicans are the ones who like to wave around the Gadsden flag, the Don't Tread on Me flag, the ones who parade around in tricorner hats, waving the patriotic stars and bars of our founders who fought against British tyranny for self-rule. How should the American people react to the state, the government, invalidating the people's choice? How do you think they would react? What would have happened in this country if this lawsuit had won? I think it's pretty clear that if it had won, and again, it didn't, it lost, thank goodness, right? But if it had won, it would have represented the worst crisis for the country since secession. And I don't think that's an overstatement. It's not just me. This is part of an impassioned plea that Democratic Senator Chris Murphy made today. And think about the fact that these words needed to be spoken today on the floor of the United States Senate.
Right now, the most serious attempt to overthrow our democracy in the history of this country is underway. Those who are pushing to make Donald Trump president for a second term, no matter the outcome of the election, are engaged in a treachery against their nation. You cannot, at the same time, love America and hate democracy. But as we speak, a whole lot of flag-waving Republicans are nakedly trying to invalidate millions of legal votes because that is the only way that they can make Donald Trump president again.
Now, of course, legally, the lawsuit was complete garbage. Okay? Garbage. The suit and all the friends of the court briefs that went along with it that were filed on its behalf, they were filled with lies and bad faith and misreadings of the law and like ridiculous, embarrassing typos. I mean, today, New Nevada and New California joined the lawsuit. And if you're scratching your head and you're saying, oh, I don't know those were states, you're not wrong. They aren't real states. Somehow they got in there. So at one level, right, again, we've been saying this for months. At one level, this is clownish buffoonery, like all the haphazard attempts to overturn the election that we have watched get laughed out of court for the last month. But at another level, it is very desperately, desperately dangerous and serious. I was trying to think about how to characterize it today, because it has both these qualities to it. I mean, to me, it's the constitutional equivalent of someone walking up to someone else, maybe someone they're having an argument with a loaded 9mm weapon and the safety on, and drawing the gun and pointing it to someone's head and pulling the trigger. Nothing happens in the end. The safety's on, but what is that? Is that a prank? Is it a bluff? No. It's a threat. They're holding a loaded gun to American democracy with this lawsuit. Just because the safety is on now doesn't mean it will not fire the next time. And at some level, I do think, and this is, I guess, me going out of my way to be charitable to people that have thrown in with this tawdry, treacherous undertaking. At some level, I do think the vast majority of the Republicans see this as political posturing. I think part of the reason so many Republicans have signed on is because they think they aren't playing with live ammunition. And they joined what Pennsylvania probably correctly characterized the seditious abuse of the court system because they know they will not face any political backlash. Certainly not within the party and not with voters, probably. Trump voters certainly will not punish them. And that includes the 2 Georgia senators who are asking their own voters' votes to be thrown out. And it includes the 12 members of the states involved who are Republicans who were elected by the same votes they want to throw out and who now want to go serve in Congress. Figure that one out. Joe Biden and Barack Obama and many others said that this last election was a referendum on democracy itself. And because a majority of people agreed with them and democracy won, now Republicans want to override the majority. They lost a referendum on democracy, and now the Republican Party has thrown in against democracy itself.